get the information. We are, as if by magic, so we can get this information to those of us those volunteers who haven't been able to join us. And we are here today in order to deliver a session for you as part of our ongoing series of sessions that some of you may have previously attended. We've had one so far on breaking the ice. We've had another one which was very well received just before Christmas, delivered by Emma Spiers, who's going to be talking to us today on a deep dive into phonics. And today we're going to be talking about how to engage shy and reluctant readers. It's obviously important, as many of you will know, that the TutorMate programme focuses its efforts on children who are struggling and who have fallen behind in their reading. And of course, those children can often therefore be shy and reluctant and worried about their reading. So our session this morning is going to try and give you some practical tips as well as some context about how you can go about supporting those children the best. So I'm going to hand over to Emma Spiers, who is going to be leading today's session. Those of you who came to the phonics talk, you will have heard me introduce Emma previously. Emma is a very seasoned expert on phonics and all things to do with reading. She has 20 years of experience as a teacher, as a leader in schools, and even as an Ofsted inspector. And for the last 10 years, she's been running a very successful consultancy training teachers in the pedagogy of phonics and early reading, and has her own website called The Learning Lady. So I'll hand over to Emma. She's going to take us through some slides. There'll be an opportunity for you to put some questions in the chat at various points. And our aim is that the input from Emma, and then also myself, because I'm going to be sharing a few tips on how to use the platform to engage shy and reluctant readers after Emma's spoken. We will then hope to finish that by 9:30 and then have an opportunity for you to ask us questions. So Emma, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. And yeah, today we're going to be thinking about those engaging those shy and reluctant readers. And we know that there are so many of you that are going to probably come up against this in some form or another. You know, it's hard, isn't it? Especially with the way that you're working with this platform. You're not in the same room as the readers. And like Emma says, by the very nature of them, some of them are going to be shy and reluctant. Just because when you find something hard, often really what happens is it really knocks your confidence. So I'm going to really talk you through some things, and I'm pretty sure a lot of them will really resonate with you. We really want you to be able to ask as many questions as you feel you want to. It's likely that you've got your own experiences of some of this, so we want you to be able to refer back to some of that and actually just think about, you know, questions that were popping up in your head. You were like, oh, how do I deal with this? So that's sort of where we're going to go for the next short piece of time. So usually when we think about these shy and reluctant readers, they're like it for a reason. They commonly lack confidence. They don't see themselves as readers. So whereas you would pick up a book and happily read away, if you find it hard and if you are reluctant, it's usually because you find it hard or because you've got a really poor mindset around reading. If that's your case, then you're just going to lack confidence. You're going to see everybody else around you being able to do it better than you, and you're just already going to be on a downward spiral, even if you're only, you know, I've seen this with children as young as 4 at the very beginning of their reading, the big beginning of their reading journey, which is really sad. I think it's important for us to realise that, you know, lots of children come to school. We don't always expect it, but they do. They come to school with already having negative experiences, so they might have had a varied experience of reading at home. So if you are reluctant to read, it's possibly because you've not seen enough adults read. Maybe the reading that you've seen has only ever been on a phone. Maybe you don't have many books at home, and I don't even mean, you know, child-centered books. Maybe that there just aren't books in the house. We're moving towards a more technological way of working all the time in our home lives, aren't we? And it could be that books and reading in that sense is completely alien to the child. So I guess really what we need to be doing is getting ourselves in the mindset themselves, what it feels like to be them on the other side of the screen, and thinking about what it is that is making them reluctant. Obviously, in the time that you've got, you can't be an amateur psychologist. You're not going to be able to iron all of those problems out. These are commonly the kinds of things that we're working with day to day when we're teaching children and leading in schools. But I suppose it's just important for you to have at the back of their minds that, you know, all readers are coming to this not necessarily from the same starting point mindset wise. And for me it was driving. If you've ever tried to do anything that's really, really hard, and you find it hard and it feels like it keeps getting harder, you're going to be in that, you're going to want to try less, and you are going to be reluctant, and you are sometimes going to present as being withdrawn. They might feel like they're singled out. Often with programs like this, sometimes children really love it because they're getting that one-to-one adult attention. Sometimes they might be a bit suspicious of it. So I guess that's something, it's not necessarily going to be true, because I guess the children have been picked for this program for all the right reasons and by somebody who knows the child well. But I think just being aware that, you know, they're doing maybe something different to everybody else. And, you know, if you've done some icebreaker sessions, thinking about how we can be as reassuring as we possibly can really help. I'm going to give you some top tips for that this morning. They know they find reading hard. So if you're working with a reader who has been selected for this program because they need more practice, 9 times out of 10 it's because they already find it hard. They could be falling behind from their peers, and if you're falling behind and you see everybody else being better than you, then it's not, you are going to be more reluctant, aren't you? Is it, you know, that fear of failure that's very, very human. They might be afraid of making mistakes because obviously you're not in the room next to them. Trying to get that relationship with them is going to be a bit harder for you. So that whole idea of making mistakes, you know, you need to be in a very safe relationship with somebody to try and fail. So we've got to try and think of, with the confines and the boundaries of the platform that we're working in, think about some really sensible ways to be able to address that. They might not be used to practicing. Children that find reading hard or got a negative reading mindset, they choose to do less of it, and the less they do, the less progress they make, and it's like a massive vicious cycle. So they might find, you know, having that adult one-to-one time, that might be a challenge for them. And they might have other things on their mind. You know, often when as adults we expect children to be coming to the activities that we've presented to them with that fresh, you know, a childlike mind and being super ready to go. But if maybe their brother's stolen their toy at home, or if they're hungry, or if they haven't slept well, or they're worried who's going to be picking them up, you know, it could just be, oh, they need the toilet. It could be like one of a million different things that throws them off. So I suppose this is the challenge for us, really. Really, there's a few top tips that we want to share with you today, because this is, you can't save the world in the time that you've got, but these are just top tips to try and make it easy. Because when you've got that reluctant reader on the other side of things, whether it's somebody that you're reading one-to-one with in school or on a platform like this, there are some little things that you can do that can try to make it a bit easier. And I guess really my first tip would be just be persistent, really, and be very patient. Because, you know, if you've ever found anything hard and you felt reluctant to try, or you've been afraid to make mistakes, what's the worst thing that can happen to you? It's when somebody piles the pressure on. So this is about being patient and being able to support, but also to try and get them to be the best that they can be within that kind of supportive relationship. So we can help by being completely as supportive as we can, and start by, and not feeling like this assessment opportunity, this reading opportunity that we're having for children is to see what they can do. We are supporting them. So it doesn't really matter if we're doing all of it together and gradually releasing over time. That's going to help them learn one step at a time and feel safe. So don't feel like you've got to be like, oh, I want to see what you can do, I'm not going to help you. You can almost read together if you want to. Reading practice makes all the difference. The more they do it, the better they get. So even just hearing you reading alongside them could just be enough to get them, you know, it'll be a few times, and then that might get the ball get the ball rolling, giving them clear guidance on how they need to improve, and obviously in their speak. So, you know, when you are finding something hard to do, say for example you're learning to drive a car, what really helps you get better is by somebody saying, do you know what, when you do that, if you just try this, then that will really help. So, you know, reading is no different. And just because they're children, again, it's absolutely no different. The process is exactly the same. Give them some clear guidance on what they need to try next to get a little bit better. Because that's really, you know, learning to read feels very overwhelming because it's so hard for young children. So thinking about that is really key. Success provides the greatest motivation. So this is like learning to swim. You know, when you're in that kind of you've swum a width, that first time you swim a width, then you're desperate to get back in the pool again because you want to see if you can do it again. It's exactly the same kind of thing. So really, this is why we provide the children with the decodable books, the books that they can fully sound out, because we're providing with them, well, you've got the tools to be able to do it. Your teachers pick this book, he or she knows that you will be able to read it. So, you know, we're setting you up for success. And remember that one small instance can set back progress for weeks. So like learning to swim, if you, I don't know, if for one reason you get halfway across and you feel like you want to put your feet down and then you can't put your feet down and you panic and you're flailing around in the water, that little incident could be like, oh, I don't want to go back to swimming. I don't want to go back to swimming, because you've felt that failure and that fear, and it puts you right off. And actually reading can feel very like that. It requires resilience, motivation and persistence more than any kind of reading skills. They recognise in this reading framework. So during the pandemic in 2021, there was a Department for Education document that was produced for educators. And it talks about pupils who find it difficult to learn to read are likely to struggle across the curriculum. Pupils who fail to learn to read early on start to dislike reading. So what we're trying to do with a programme on a platform like this is trying to eliminate that as much as we can by giving them that safe space, by working with them, by giving them lots and lots and lots of chances to practice with us. And like I said, a big part of this isn't really to do with reading skills at all, it's to do with reading mindset and developing confidence. So first things first, when you are coming to this situation, you need to identify the signs that young readers might be reluctant. And you need to set the scene that this is a safe place to practice. So I guess if you've been through the icebreaker session and just through the way you generally are with them, that can be enough. Think about as many different ways that, you know, this is exactly the same as winning an adult over in a conversation. You're trying to think of a good way in with them. Sometimes it can be humour. Sometimes it can be just giving them time and space. Sometimes, I mean, I find humour works quite well, particularly with boys who are reluctant or being a bit silly or making your own mistakes so they feel better than you. Those kinds of things can be helpful. I guess the challenge for you is think how you can do that on a platform like this. But maybe think about that. Become a co-reader. So rather than seeing this as, I want you to read to me, if you approach this as we're going to read this together, that already feels less of a conflict. It already feels less that we're putting you in a situation where it might not feel so safe. So deciding that, you know, I've spotted somebody who might be a bit reluctant, I've set the scene, I still feel like them, you know, I'm judging it, that I still think they might be a bit reluctant, they're not giving a lot back. Think about how you can become that co-reader. Let's see if we can read this book together. Giving praise is something that we would probably all recognise if we're trying to improve somebody's mindset or build their confidence. I think here, giving clear and specific praise and feedback is really important, because we don't really want to be saying, oh, well done, that's really nice, because children don't get that. They don't understand, well, what do you mean is really nice? My hair? My smile? What is it? So we need to be, when we're giving praise, and Emma's going to obviously talk about the stickers and little strategies that you can use on the platform, but really the biggest thing that makes the biggest difference time and time again with students is to be that positive praise with your body language, with your voice, with the way that you say things, and be really clear in the kinds of things that you say. So we are thinking that some reluctant readers, some of you will have experienced this. What might they look like? Do you want to share some of your ideas in the chat? Let's see if you feel confident, just to add some ideas about when you've seen some shy and reluctant readers on the platform. What did they look like? Long pauses, yeah. Lots and lots of like, it can feel very uncomfortable to us as adults. We want to fill the air a bit. Giggling, yeah. All very human things though, because distracted, yeah, go silent.
There's a question there, Emma, I think also earlier on about from Tracy saying, is it okay to say, I find this word tricky?
Yeah,
Some words sound the same, but are spelt differently, for example.
Yeah. Other phrases that are really helpful as well, like, I bet you're not going to be able to get them to prove you right. That can be really, really helpful. Oh, I bet you're never going to be able to read this, because you know for a fact that the teachers have picked the books to match them, not wanting to attend the session. You see, that's that thing, isn't it? If you're finding, let's say, gosh, they're coming thick and fast now. If you're learning to swim and you've had a really bad swimming lesson, what's your default? Oh, I'm not going swimming anymore. And this is why children give up on things like clubs that they go to. Exactly that. So they know it makes them feel a negative feeling, and they're wanting to take that feeling away. They know they don't like that feeling, wanting to end the session early, not wanting to attend the session, lack of interest. So they're completely, these are human behaviours. They're deciding to opt out because they don't like the feeling of it being difficult, or they want the feeling of being able to play games. They want to play games because that feels good to them. It feels relaxing, it feels fun. Learning to read is hard. It gives them that negative feeling in their tummy, that knot inside of them, and that's why they're deciding to opt out, be distracted, giggling. So this is often a thing when I do training with teachers and teaching assistants in schools. I ask them questions, and it's things often that they don't know, and then they start talking to each other, and then they giggle. And it's a very human thing, it's just a kind of a distraction ploy. So yeah, these are all, I would say, very common things. The lack of interest, you've got to think of really quick ways of getting them to look. I bet you can't read this in 5 seconds, or let's read it together. I want you to join in with me. Be really clear and specific about what it is that you want to do. This is quite a hard sentence for them. I think we should read it together. There's nothing wrong in saying that. If they're lacking in interest and they don't want to be involved, then that's a really key way. I want us to do this together, rather than doing it to you or you doing it to them. We need to make sure that they're joining in together. So I think, they're asking if it's time to go and do something else. What was that? So asking if they're done yet. It's because they're not interested in it, because they know they're finding it hard. They're finding everything that they can to kind of distract them. That's a bit like when I've got something really hard to write or my accounts to do, I go and find the cleaning because it's a better distraction. I know I can do that. The accounts I find quite hard to do. So those are all very common reactions. Hopefully some of the things that we're going to suggest now are going to be things that will be really helpful. So as you go into this, don't be afraid of the pauses. I know it's very awkward with a platform like this, because obviously there's sometimes a bit of a delay, but don't be afraid of that. And I would think about things going into this before, have a list of things before you even start. So the ideas that Emma's given you on the icebreaker session will be helpful, but just think you're going into this as a learning conversation. You're not going to go and you're not doing something to the child. It's a bit like if you're an adult going to a book group or a book club. It's that kind of feeling that we want to try and create in them. It's something that they're going to look forward to, not something that they've got to dread doing before PE. So it's thinking about that kind of thing. So commenting rather than questioning is a valid tool. That's speech therapists recommend it. we get very quick into asking the questions, and for them it feels like an interrogation. If I came to you in a book group and started saying, oh, what book did you like? How many pages did you read on Monday night? Which was your favourite part? What was your least favorite? When you go into a book group or a book club as an adult, you have a conversation. Oh, I really like this book because it made me feel this. Does it make you feel? You know, it's more of a dialogue rather than a kind of a set of interrogation questions. So start by thinking about comments and questions. Oh, it looks like you've been busy this morning. I bet you've been working really hard on your reading since last time. You sound like you're ready to read. Or I've been looking forward to reading with you all day. Oh, I can't wait to see what we're going to be reading together. Those are really good starting points. Now, I'm not saying that that's for some of the things that you've listed there, they're going to be the magical solution, but they are things that are going to be, you know, it's going to take time to sow those seeds, that this is a safe space and that it's okay. Again, commenting rather than questioning when you're introducing the new book. I wonder what this book could be about. And then just be quiet. Let them talk. Oh, this book reminds me of when I went on holiday. Then be quiet. Let them talk. If they don't, it's fine. But don't be afraid. Count 10 in your head if you need to, because this is about giving them time and space. You're helping them to see that this isn't their chance to be interrogated. This is their chance to come back to you. It's okay. And if you're feeling awkward, they might be feeling awkward too, because those pauses can be awkward, can't they? Oh, I bet you like this dog in this book. I think this book might be about. This is a little bit like when, do you remember how those kinds of sentence starters are really, really important because they're starting a conversation. You can see that they're kind of doing the same job as asking a question or giving information, but they're just worded in a way which feels more relaxing. And what you're trying to do with this, and it's trickier because obviously, because of the nature of the platform, trying to establish a relationship, but it's harder, isn't it, online? I think the pandemic taught us all that, but trying to create that kind of calm environment where their ideas and their thoughts are valued and it's okay to make mistakes are really important. This co-reading then, so when you're working with students on that kind of red to green kind of level, these are really useful suggestions to think about. So this idea of co-reading, what I mean by that is it gives the readers the options to read with you or on their own. So if they read on their own, provide them plenty of processing time. Do you want to have it? I mean, you can throw it open to them. Do you want to have a go first? Blend the sounds with them if they struggle. If they get to something that they find really hard, if they're notably struggling, you can say, well, shall I read that word? That's okay. Remember, this isn't a test. It's not an assessment. We're helping them to practice, and doing it together is okay. Give them time to struggle first, but just try and judge it if you can by, you know, if they're really struggling with something, just think about, oh, let's step in now, it's time. It takes a while and experience to get that idea, but try not to feel like you've got to jump in all the time. Independent readers should reread sentences independently to help them. So if you've helped them read a sentence, if you said, oh, they've got halfway through the sentence and they're still struggling, and you just say, shall I finish the sentence off? Now you read the sentence again. That can also be a really, really useful strategy. So if you've got somebody who's struggling and they're not participating, you can say, right, today, I thought we could read this book together and get 3 pages in and be like, do you want to try the beginning of this sentence? And I'll finish it off. And that's what co-reading is. It's that building that confidence. It's encouraging that independence as much as we can at the same time as building their confidence. If they are independent readers, encourage them if you can to be correcting themselves as far as possible. Does that make sense? Does that sound right? Those kinds of things. Just to try and get them to correct themselves. Common difficulties at the point of reading, the reader doesn't recognise the separate letter sounds in the word. So, for example, they might read the word sh, eep, and go, or they might even read it because they've been taught all those separate letter sound correspondences. Their teachers thought, oh, do you know what, that's a perfect match for them. They know those letter sound correspondences, but they're not seeing those separate sounds in the words in the context of a sentence. So that might be something, that blending process, so recognising those sounds That might be something that they struggle with. They might not recognise the common exception, or those tricky, those sight words like the or said or was. So that might be something that they struggle with. They might struggle, they might be able to say all the separate sounds, sh, eep, but they might not be able to hold it in their head long enough to squish them back together. They might miss words out or make up words. Or they're all common things that children do. They might be able to read the whole sentence, but not really understand it. So I feel like they're all things that you need to be aware of that might happen, and think about, do you know what, and a lot of this is building knowledge over time. So if they struggled with those common exception words the time before, actually, do you know what? They struggled with that last week, so I'm just going to read all those words for them. Or they really struggled with to squish those sounds together last time, so I'm going to get them to sound it out, and I'm going to blend the words. Because remember, the reason that these children are reluctant is because they haven't necessarily either had the practice, they've not got the confidence, they've not got the you know, there's all kinds of reasons why they would find this hard, and the harder they find it, the less they want to do it, because it gives them a feeling in their tummy that they just can't do it. So anybody want to add anything into the chat? Any comments or questions up to that point?
We've hello everyone. I'm Rebecca at Innovations for Learning, TutorMate. Does anyone want to ask anything or unmute themselves and ask any questions? We've had some brilliant recommendations from everyone in the chat.
Is it okay to speak?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I think that example of sheep is very good, because I have a student that's kind of on the cusp of not really understanding that. And I think the fear I have is that if I try and teach it my way, I'm going to interfere with what the teacher's doing. And I think it's not knowing how best to encourage that. And I've got over I do some reading with her now, and I thought, well, that's like cheating almost. You know, it's so funny, isn't it? It's just been really thought-provoking, actually. And seeing some of the comments, I've been feeling that I've been really inadequate as a support for this child when I've seen everybody else's.
Honestly, you're really not. And if you were in a school situation, you know, I go into schools inspecting all the time and watching children particularly like this all the time, and it's so common. It's so common because it's really human. If you think of anything as an adult that you find hard, you do everything to try and avoid doing that thing.
Yeah.
And you're not, you know, you are giving them the most precious gift. You are giving them time. And I think it's such a common thing with teachers, with teaching assistants, to feel like, right, I want to see what you can do. I want you to show me what you can do. I want you to show, don't copy that person next to you, show, because we all went to school and it was like that when we were at school. But I think what we know is that actually human beings you get the best out of human beings when they're in a comfortable and they're in a positive mind, comfortable frame of mind, and they're in that kind of confident mindset. We know that from all kinds of realms of human life. So really, by reading with them, you are not doing anything wrong. If anything, you know, because over time you'll be able to gradually release that support. You're giving them time that somebody in school would probably be loving to give them, but hasn't got the time to give them. So it's very precious what you're doing, and you won't be doing it wrong at all. At all. The information that we gave you in the last session, that was all to do with phonics and the sound, how to say the sounds and all of that, you know, it doesn't matter what program the school follows, the way that you say the sounds is going to be the same no matter what program the school follows. So you're not going to be saying any of that wrong.
Sorry, Emma, I was just going to interject briefly, if I may, just to say, you know, Rob, it's interesting you say that, because we do get feedback from people, rather as you've said, feeling like somehow they're cheating by doing the co-reading. But I do hope that one thing you take away from Emma's comments today is that really isn't cheating. You know, we have this sort of sense as adults that, you know, in our lives people have got to, you know, do things on their own, otherwise they're not doing them adequately. But it is very different when we're talking about small people who are just at the beginning of learning. So do feel, and Emma's got, you know, this is a perfect encapsulation of it. I do, we do, you do. So yeah, I'll leave Emma to finish off, but thank you for that interjection. And those of you who do have to leave us shortly, there are, you know, some fantastic tips that are coming through in the chat. We'll come back at the end, and my colleague Becky will just pull out any other questions that we've missed, but do have a read through the tips that others are making. There's one volunteer who's joined us today called Eddie Durant, who is now in his 5th year of volunteering, so he deserves a massive round of applause for that commitment. But he's put lots of suggestions in the chat based on his experience of now having had lots of children coming in different shapes and sizes. So yeah, do have a look at what other people are saying. Yeah, back to you, Emma.
Oh, fab. So if your reader is reading anything like red books, yellow books, blue books, green books, that independent reading and supporting with them with that independent reading could look like you have a go and I'll help you as you go along. If you've got readers who are working on the pink, magenta or red levels, they're very much at the early stages of reading. And this is a process that I would use in a school, and you can use it you can use it with your own children at home. It's a I do, we do, you do model, and it's really designed around helping children to gain that confidence. So here's a word, sheep. I'm going to read it, sheep. Now let's read it together. Sheep, sheep. Now you do it on your own. Sheep, sheep. I feel like there's a feeling that we've always got to get to the end of the book, and where that's it's a great ambition. But if you feel like you're having to go through every single word like that, it's better that they get through. It's better that they read it to a quality level than to try and aim to get through the book. So I would use this method that I do, we do, you do for every single word. If they're struggling and they're really reluctant, do that for every single word. So we're going to do it for every single word. Now we're going to do it for the whole sentence. So I'm going to read the whole sentence. We're going to read the whole sentence. You're going to read the whole sentence. This will stop them being distracted because they'll be engaged. They'll have to be doing something. They're having to listen and join in with you. So this is such a powerful way of working. I absolutely love it. It makes such a big difference because it really builds confidence. They've seen what they're supposed to do. They've done it with you, and then they're doing it on their own. So it's a bit like anything where we're trying to build that confidence and build that I can, that I can attitude is perfect for that. So if I was reading this with you, for example, I would say I got, I got a big, I got a big cat, I got a big cat. Now let's do it together. So we do it together like that, and then I'd say, right, okay, your turn. Now, like I say, I mean, luckily the magenta, the pink and the red books are really short, so you've not got so many pages to get through. But, you know, it's much better that you do that whole kind of building that confidence that way. At the end of each page, or at a natural break, depending on what you judge with the situation, make sure you help them know what they're doing really well. So these are some things that some kind of sentence starters and some sentence enders if you want. I really like the way you blended all those sounds together. I can see you've been practicing those tricky words or those sight words a lot. The way you changed when you got them muddled really helped you to work out that word. You should be really proud of yourself because you kept reading right to the end. So these are kinds of things that you could be commenting on. Did they remember the tricky or common exception words, match the letters to the sounds, blend the words, squish them together to be able to read them? Remember not to miss any words out. Did they not guess at any words? Did they check that it made sense? Did they correct themselves? Did they keep going without giving up? These are all things that you can comment on, either by praise or saying, do you know what, let's see if we can this week blend the words together. Let's really focus on that, because it's overwhelming. If you're learning to swim, you work on one thing at a time, don't you? You go on your back, you kick your legs, then you go on your front and you focus on the breathing, or you focus on the arms, or you think about swimming lessons. They're always like that. They're about building up one little tiny skill at a time. So without further ado, that's kind of the information. There are lots of little nuggets, and obviously it's brilliant that people have been putting things in the chat, because putting things in the chat, ideas from other people who are using the platform, these are kind of generic ideas, but things that other people have got to say are completely valid. Emma, is there anything that you would add now about how the platform can help a bit with all of this?
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to share my screen and just show people a couple of things that have been mentioned in the chat, in fact. So just in case you're not aware of them, particularly if you are newer to the programme, hopefully you can see that now. So just a quick reminder that in terms of going through books in advance of a session, which is something that Emma suggested you might want to do, so that you can familiarise yourself with the text, and maybe also that you can pick out things that you know your particular child is interested in. You can always look at the practice tutoring module, you know, click on stories there, choose the panel of stories that are relevant for that child's particular reading level, and then you'll have a list of them all there, so that you can go through them in advance and be clear about, you know, which stories you might want to point your pupil towards, because there are areas of particular interest for them. So that is one tip. A couple of people have mentioned using the OWL. So again, remember that you are able to.
Emma,
you're not sharing.
sorry, you're not sharing your screen.
Really? Okay, because it says to me that I am. So apologies for that. Okay. So let me try that again.
This is a different screen we're seeing. We just see inside the TutorMate platform.
Okay, if I stop sharing, would that help?
Yeah, if you stop sharing, Emma. I mean, unfortunately on my end it says you are screen sharing, so that is always
there it
is.
Is that okay?
It's fine. Yeah,
perfect. Okay, so yeah, I was just here with this panel to remind you that if you wanted to go through the stories in advance, you can use the practice tutoring module, which you can see on your home screen when you first log in, and that will enable you to see all the stories at a level and go through them and think about in advance which one your child is interested in. You also have the option of, as a couple of people have mentioned in the chat, you know, using the OWL, the little message pupil, for that specific praise that Emma talked about. So you read and so well, and you could send that to your child using the little OWL, and that should appear on their end when they're able to see that as if spoken by the OWL. So let's try that again. So you read street for the first time, and if you press enter there, it should appear on the child's end, and let's hope that it does that. It may be that we've got a little bit of a delay going forward. Yes, so there we are. You read street for the first time. Now it may be that your child can't read exactly what the OWL said and you'll read it for them, but the idea of the OWL popping up and doing something for them, I think is an incentive. Similarly, that the stickers that we've got at the bottom here that you'll be familiar with, and often children have a favorite sticker that they want to particularly see, so use those to incentivize them as well. A couple of people have mentioned in the chat that it can be a really nice idea to find a story at a much higher reading level than the one that your child can read for themselves, and read that to them at the end of the session. So that's a lovely tip. And I think the other thing I would say is that I've noticed a few people who have mentioned that there are children who are do take their reluctance to a point which means that they walk away from a session, they'll suddenly disappear in the middle of it, and while that might happen sporadically and you can manage it, if it is something that is happening repeatedly, or is giving you cause for concern, or if you're working with a child who, as a volunteer I think mentioned, burst into tears during a session, then do please reach out to the teacher using the messaging part of the platform, because you want to get their advice and guidance about how to proceed. And if you don't hear from teachers, then please don't hesitate to reach out to us, because we've got a team of programme managers who work closely with schools and who go and make connections with teachers if they're not replying to your messages, and find out if there's anything particularly we need to address with particular children. So please don't feel reticent or shy about doing that. So I will stop my screen share now, even if it didn't quite work the first time, and hand back to Becky just to see if there is anything else, Becky, that's come through in the chat in terms of questions we should address before we finish. because I know that I'm conscious of people's time and we're already at 9:42.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything specific, Emma, that, I mean, Eddie's just put a comment about, are you doing home sessions? I'm not sure if they can be very different in style and pace. So obviously that's a different area if you want to comment on that, Emma.
Yes, that is that's really an interesting point, Eddie. We've got at the moment somewhere between 100 and 150 children who are having additional sessions at home in as well as having their session in the classroom. And of course, that environment can be very different. For some children, it works better than being in the classroom because they don't have the distractions and they feel more comfortable in their home environment. For others, it's actually the opposite. They find it more distracting being at home, and maybe their siblings running around and different things happening in the home environment. So if there is appetite amongst volunteers for people to have a particular session focused on home reading, we could definitely do that. Okay, are there any final questions that anyone's got, or anything that you wanted to say, Emma, before we finish?
No, just you know, it's really common. It's going to be really common with the kinds of readers that you're going to be reading with. Try some of the strategies. You might find, while I was listening to what Emma was saying, I was thinking that actually, I think maybe if I was with somebody that I knew was really reluctant, I think, especially if they're reading those magenta and pink and red books, I think I might be inclined to read the actual book first to prove to them it's easy enough, and then go through it with them. I think that might be a way in. It's that, you know, and also you're dealing with human beings, so every single one of them is going to be different, aren't they? And what works for one, which is kind of why it's brilliant, but also why it can equally be frustrating, what's going to work for one person isn't going to work for another one. And being a bit silly and, you know, bringing humour into it, that can really, I think that can often be, oh, I can't read this word, can you just help me? You know, those kinds of things, helping them to see that they're more of an expert than you, or that you can be a bit silly. It relaxes the situation right down. Because remember, when they're reluctant, it's usually because they've got a feeling in their tummy. They can't explain it, they can't articulate it, but that's usually why it is.
Thank you, Emma. And we do have quite a lot of guidance and resources, as Eddie's just pointed out in the chat too, available for volunteers when they get started on web pages on our website. So we will be updating, I think, that Becky, in relation to some of the excellent things that people have said today, and we'll circulate that information, a reminder about where to find those resources in the follow-up to this session, as well as the video, and a reminder that on Wednesday we have the other end of the coin, Emma returning to lead a session on how to challenge capable and confident readers, which it sounds like from today, those of you who have come along have enjoyed the solidarity and the sense that you're not alone in working with a child who's shy and reluctant. But there are some of you perhaps who have also had experience in the past of capable and confident readers, or indeed your shy and reluctant reader might become a capable and confident reader in the next couple of months. And so you'll want to be prepared about how to support them. So do join us on Wednesday if you want to, or encourage your colleagues and those who are also doing TutorMate within your businesses to join us for that session too. Thank you very much. I know Becky's put a couple of comments in the chat about how you can find videos as well. But otherwise, thank you very much, Emma. Thank you, Becky, and have a lovely rest of your Monday, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Goodbye.
Thank you.